What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and today I am extremely excited to share with you my Subterror Guru Pure Subterror deck. And this is not the Guru control deck that we were talking about on stream the last time that I was playing on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. That version of the deck will be coming next week, but the reason that we're showing this version first is because I got a ton of comments from people saying, you know, the Guru control deck is cool, it's using some of the Subterror cards, but it's not really using the Behemoth, it's not really using like the original Subterrors except for Hidden City, so how can you actually build a more pure version? And that's what we're showing in today's video. So there's not 1,000 hand trap, it's not a million expensive cards. This is pretty much a Subterror deck that if you had Subterrors back when they originally came out and you've just been sitting on the cards, if you just want to build a new version of the deck without spending hundreds of dollars on hand traps, this is the way to go. So this is a more budget-friendly version. Obviously, many of these Subterror cards have actually increased in price since the release of Guru, so it's a little bit less budget than it probably would have been. But yeah, if you've been sitting on the Subterror cards, you want to play Subterrors just casually at locals, this is the profile for you. And there are some pretty cool tricks with the Behemoths. I mean, they're not like the most competitive cards, but at least in this version, there's some cool things you can do. So anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at the Subterrors, the pure version. So first off, 3 copies of Subterror Guru. I can't even believe this is a real card. It looks great. I wish it was a super rare or something, but what are you going to do? So this is the big card that just came out. This changes the deck completely. The main combo with this card, as I talked about, is that you add this with Hidden City, you set it, and then Hidden City flips it face up, and then you get to search any Subterror card from your deck to your hand. A lot of times that's either a Behemoth or Phoenix or whatever you need, basically. This card just grabs everything. That is a hard once return effect, and it also has a quick effect that lets you book a moon an opponent's monster and your guy as well, as long as you control another face-up Subterror. That works really well with the trap card because you can flip the trap card and then you can chain this effect because now you have a face-up Subterror, which is a trap card. This card's ridiculous. It's just there's so much advantage in one card. This card is great. I'm so glad we got it. Not as good, not on the same level as like Spiral Double Helix, which was the other card that was released at the same time. Well, this card was released a little bit after, but not that kind of level, but still very good. And then we have 3 copies of Subterror Phoenix. This is basically the best way to explain this card is that it's an Ash Blossom, except it stops any effect, which is insane. The only requirement is that you have to have a face-up Subterror, so you have to, when your opponent activates a card, you activate the Phoenix, you negate the card, and then you also set a Subterror monster on your field to face on offense position. That is very cool because in the case of Guru, then you can like trigger its effect again when it flips face up. So it's like, it might seem like a downside if you don't play this deck, but all the cards have flip effects, which is really cool. Also, this has a very cool revival effect as well that lets you get back your Guru or whatever you need. So this card's very good. These 2 cards are like the main 2 cards of the Guru control deck, and they're also very good in the pure version too. The new card that we're playing, well, not really new, but the card that is not in the control version of the deck, we have Subterror Nemesis Warrior. This card keeps bringing itself back, it keeps applying pressure, and I really like it in this version. This was kind of like the original card that made me like Subterrors in the first place. It's a card that you can just recycle over and over and over again, and that's really cool. It's what this deck really needs right now. It's really good for Link summoning, it's really good for Synchro summoning. I'm a big fan of this card at 3 copies in this version. 1 copy of Subterror Nemesis Archer. Basically, the important part about this card is that it's a giant rat for your Subterrors, and the one that you're trying to summon every time is this Guru. So your opponent attacks over the Archer, or you crash with something, summon Guru from your deck and face down in defense position, then trigger its effects. That's the reason that that's played. For the Behemoths, which, like I said, you're not playing a ton of these in the control deck, but in this version, we just want to play all of them, just all the old school Subterrors. So we have 3 copies of Umastrix. When this one's flip face up, you get to banish a card. That's crazy. You just get to banish all your opponent's monsters. They can't do anything to it. So the main idea behind this deck, more so than the Guru deck, is that you're trying to trigger these Behemoths on your turn and your opponent's turn, and then in this case you're just ripping through all of your opponent's monsters with really powerful. And then we have 2 copies of Subterror Behemoth Stalagma, and there's Slagmo, sorry, but this card is the other like OG Subterror. So we're playing all of the original ones, and this card is a Destiny draw, so it's pretty cool. You get free draws, you load up your graveyard with things to revive with Phoenix. Just a good card all around. And once again, you want to trigger this. This one you're usually just trying to trigger on your turn, not so much like Umastrix, you're trying to trigger on both players' turns, but it's pretty good. And then we have these little huge Subterror that I'm not going to pronounce that, like, it's the Glacier one. So this guy is a Foolish Burial when it's flipped, which is really cool. You can send stuff for Phoenix, you can send Warrior, and also you can send Glow Up Bulb, which we are playing, and then you can make Naturia Beast and just win the game. So this card's really nice. And then we have 1 copy of this guy, who I also will not try to pronounce, the Voltic guy. This is basically a mind control for set monsters, and this combos really well with Guru because you flip your opponent's cards face down, and you can steal them with this, use them for Link summoning or whatever, so that's really cool. Then the last card card. The only non-Subterror monster in the entire deck is one Glow Up Bulb. Combos really nicely with the Glacier, combos really nicely with the 1-for-1. It just, it's a really cool card that you can make Trish and a Cherry Beast with, and you can also do Link summons with this, which is really cool, because Mrs. Radiant is probably the best Link monster in the extra deck. So that's it for the monsters, kind of like I said, no hand traps, just pure Subterrors, and then one Glow Up Bulb. For the spells, we have 3 copies of Hidden City, which is like the card that's kind of spiked in price, so sorry if you don't have these already, but this searches Guru like 99.9% of the time, which is pretty much 100%, and that's what you're doing with this card. And then it has a really awesome effect that lets you change battle positions, which really works with all of your Subterror cards, because I don't think I mentioned it, but if you didn't notice, all the Behemoths have the exact same effect that says if you control no face-up monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position when a face-up monster you control is flipped face down. So that's kind of the way that you bring those guys out for free, and Hidden City turns monsters battle positions. So that's kind of cool. And then we have 2 copies of Terraforming because it's semi-limited, and so this, you should see his card in a lot of opening hands. You have 5 copies. That's a pretty good amount. You can't really use more than 1 Hidden City per turn, which kind of sucks, but you just want to see it in your opening hand because it searches Guru and gets all your combos started. So we're going to play 5 copies if possible. 2 copies of Call by the Grave. You really need those searches to go through, especially with Guru, especially on the very first turn. So you really want to play Call by the Grave. Just make sure you don't get hit by Ash Blossom or something along those lines. And then 1 Subterror Cave Clash. This card's really good. It's kind of deceptive. It might not look that good. The main effect here is that whenever you inflict battle damage with a Subterror monster, you can add a Subterror card from your grave to your hand. This recycles Fiendus infinitely, basically, and you can use it during either player's turn, which is incredible because a lot of times you can kind of trick your opponent into hitting your monsters and you flip the trap card, which doubles their, well, it doesn't exactly double their attack and defense, but it basically just increases their attack and defense by a ton, and then you can like trigger this card on their turn and add Fiendus back to your hands. It's really good. And then the 2 sort of sacky one-ups here, we have 1-for-1 and Scapegoat. Yeah, Scapegoat's limited, but it's still good in this deck for a couple reasons. The main reason is that you don't really use your extra deck too much in this deck. You do in this deck more so than the Guru control version, and that one definitely, it's hurting that there's only 1 Scapegoat. But in this deck, it's still really good. A lot of the times with this card, you're not even making Boral Sword or Boral Load. You're just making 2 Mrs. Radiant, just doing like 1,000,000 damage. And then the 1-for-1 can summon Fiendus or Glow Up Bulb, which is really cool. So those cards are just kind of like your Saki one-ofs. And yeah, there's no indulgence in this version. Like I said, I just want to make this like as budget friendly as possible for those of you that just want to play casual Subterrors. Indulgence will be in the Guru control version. I think you kind of need it for that deck. And then the trap cards, 3 Final Battle. I love this card. This card's great. You only play 2 in the Guru control version, which we'll talk about later on. But this card has a ton of effects. So it either switches the guy face up, or switches the guy face down, or makes the attack and defense of a Subterror monster equal to the combined attack and defense. So like I said, it's not exactly doubling them, but in a lot of cases it is doubling them. And then also this card, or this turn, active effects Subterror cards can't be negated. So you get one of those effects, and then this card sets itself every time you activate it, which is like, that's just so crazy. It's such a crazy mechanic. Obviously, like Scrap Iron Scarecrow has that, but that card's like just a battle trap. This card can do like 1,000 different things. So a lot of the times, the reason this card's good, the reason we're playing 3, is you want to trigger multiple Subterrors on your opponent's turn. In the Guru control deck, you're only really trying to trigger like the Guru on your opponent's turn, but in this deck, you have all the big guys, the Behemoths. So if you have multiple copies of these, you can like flip the Behemoths up on your opponent's turn. So if you have like the Umastrix, you can then like banish an opponent's monster during their turn, which is really cool. Or like this guy, you can like draw into stuff, which is kind of cool. This guy can Foolish, this guy can steal cards after you flip him face down with Guru. So a lot of different combos. You really want to be activating like multiple copies of this card every single turn. You can very easily get to all 3 of these copies on the field, and that's like really hard for your opponent to deal with. And then the attack and defense increasing effect is just crazy. That's just how you close games a lot. People are like, well, what's the win condition of this deck? Your guys just get to like 4,000 attack or 5,000 attack, and your opponent just can't deal with it. You can do it during the damage step as well, which is crazy. So this card's nuts in this version. It's good in the other version as well, but because you're triggering the Behemoths, it's really good in this version. 3 Floodgates. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like the Floodgates in these decks, so these casual decks, but there's no reason not to play Gozen Match in this deck. Every single main deck monster is Earth, and you don't really need to go in the extra deck too often, and even a lot of the extra deck monsters are Earth too, and the Scapegoat tokens are Earth. Like every single card you're using for the most part is Earth. There's no reason not to play Gozen Match. This card's really good right now. It hits all the meta decks. Even like Thunder Dragons have to play a little awkwardly around it because they have lights and darks. This card is just so good. Like you just have to play it in a deck. It's so hard. Like I know not everyone likes Floodgates, and I perfectly understand that, but especially in like a board control deck like this, if you can just like lock your opponent out with Gozen Match for like 1 turn, a lot of times you can just like OTK with Final Battle on the next turn. So this card's fantastic in this deck. I think you have to play 3 of that. As long as the format stays the same, where there's like all these different attributes going around as far as like the meta decks, I think you really want to play that. And then we have just a million Solemns. We have all of them, so they're all in here, all the good ones. 3 Solemn Strike, 1 Warning, 1 Judgment. These cards are how you like board control. It's a good way to just stop your opponent from like breaking your board, which is cool. And then you can just, once again, this is like, I know it's like a control strategy, but it has like, because of Final Battle, like doubling, or not doubling, but increasing your attack and defense on all your monsters up to just crazy numbers. Like a lot of times you can just OTK your opponent, especially when you have Missus Radiant as well. So these cards just stop your opponent from making a board in the first place, then you just kill them on the next turn, so they're really good in this deck. And that is the that's the main deck. So it's 40 cards. Like I said, it's as cheap as possible. I know I have some higher rarity versions, but you don't need ultimate Solemn Strikes. The supers just do the same effect as well. So that's kind of what's going on here. No indulgence, whatever. And then if you want to see the more like advanced version of the deck, the more expensive version of the deck at least, the Guru Control version will be posting next week, so stick around for that. Then onto the extra deck. Like I said, you don't use the extra deck very often, but it's still here. So we have 2 Missus Radiant. This is like the main thing you're summoning just for damage. 2 Link Spider, because sometimes you use 1 Missus Radiant and then you want to use like this when you go into Scapegoat to make Missus Radiant, Link Spider. That's a lot of damage, so that's pretty cool. And then also you can like go into like Borrelode and Boral Sword. Link Kribo, if you make the Borrelode or the Boral Sword, so I keep those are hard to say. It's like a tongue twister, but if you make that, you want to not waste the Link Spider or whatever. You just rather do Link Kribo, because you can bring it back potentially by tributing the Fiendus or Glow Up Bulb if you really want to. And then we have this guy that I can't pronounce, the Nightmare cards. Both of the good Borals, I mean, they don't come up too often, not usually unless you have Scapegoat and you don't want to like just kill your opponent with Missus Radiant, but they're good cards, so I like them. And then 1 Nightmare Griffin. I found myself like wanting to make this a lot when I was playing on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro with this deck. It's just like a cool card that can like recycle some of like the Solemns and stuff, which is kind of cool. And yeah, it's just like when there's like a stalemate and both players have a lot of cards, this thing's like really good to make with a Scapegoat, because you can just set whatever you need. So I like it a lot. It's cool. You can also recycle like your 1-ofs, which is cool, like 1 for 1. And then Naturia Beast, which you can make with Glow Up Bulb and Nemesis Warrior or Subterror Guru. Really great card against a lot of the meta decks this format, not so good against Altergeist, but it's really good. If you open 1 for 1, a lot of the time you're just going for this, and that's pretty cool. And then 1 Trishalos, you make this with Glow Up Bulb and then 2 level 4s for the most part, and this card, it gets in there sometimes. And you can also make this doesn't come up as often, but it's worth mentioning, you can make this when you have Glow Up Bulb, Fiendus, and Umastrix, because Umastrix is level 7, so that equals level 9. It's just like a cool removal card. And then lastly, 1 Gaga Cowboy, just in case you're going into time with this deck at locals and you want to make sure you win. There are a lot of level 4s in this deck. You summon level 4s more often than any other level, so it's a pretty good card to just splash in your extra deck. Anyway though, hope you guys enjoyed today's Subterror discussion and deck profile video. We will be posting the Guru Control deck. I know I've spent a lot of this video sort of comparing and contrasting those versions. The Guru Control is more competitive, but this one's a lot cheaper and a lot more fun because you can play the Behemoths, which I like a lot, but we'll still showcase that version next week. But I will see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Goodbye.